Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. Let's take a look at a response to a recent video of mine.
So the first thing that you willfully and very intentionally missed here was my argument, where I pointed out that the majority of scholars agree that Bereshit, the first word of Genesis 1:1, is most likely to be understood as the nomen of a construct phrase, and therefore verse 1 is to be understood as a temporal clause, and verse 2 or verse 2 and 3 therefore describe the state of affairs when God began to create the heavens and the earth.
Okay, so not from what I just heard from that argument is I'm right because the majority of scholars agree on this word. Consensus equals right.
So I have repeatedly and consistently pointed out that in no sense whatsoever am I suggesting that consensus means therefore right. In fact, here are a couple of the more recent videos I've made pointing this fact out. And a lot of people think that I rely on the academic consensus as some kind of rhetorical trump card, that I just retreat to it and say, consensus, therefore right, therefore the debate is over. And that is just a laughable caricature of what I do. My main two goals on social media are to increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion, and to combat the spread of misinformation about the academic study of the Bible and religion. And for both goals, the easiest way to achieve them is to share the academic consensus, which is the most efficient and effective shorthand for the state of the field at any given time on any given research question. Because the consensus is just the argument that the majority of scholars believes makes the best sense of the available data. And so this is not proving anything is true. We don't have the luxury of having paper that we can dip into an argument to say, oh, it turned pink, therefore it's true. This is just a collection of judgment calls. And so our best case is whatever convinces the majority of scholars, and that can and will change. And when I share things like this, there are two kinds of objections that I frequently see thrown back at me. One of these is the notion that when I say academic consensus, what I'm saying is therefore true. And this is misguided for a couple of different reasons. To begin, most of the scholarship that I have published has been challenging and trying to overturn academic consensuses. If I thought they were infallible or inerrant, I wouldn't be challenging so many of them. Most scholars are engaged in trying to produce arguments that will overturn the consensus view. And this is the other reason that this is misguided. When I say this is the academic consensus, what I mean is this is the argument that at this point in time, based on the available data, has convinced the majority of scholars. And all of those things can change. So to reiterate, my purpose on social media is to, one, increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion, and two, combat the spread of misinformation about the same. You're the public. You're not a scholar. I don't engage in actual scholarship on social media. I report on social media on what the scholarship is saying. And as I explain in those videos, the easiest and the most efficient and the shortest way of getting the public to the state of the field on any given research question at any given point in time is to share the academic consensus. It is not to say, therefore, it's right. As I explain, I frequently disagree with the consensus. Sometimes I disagree with the consensus that I share in my videos. But again, the point is not to engage in scholarship, it's to report on where the scholarship stands. Because this is not the place to go over all the arguments and try to relitigate the scholarly consensus. And the biggest reason for that is because you are not able to do that. You do not have the skills, you do not have the resources, you do not have the training. You're a part of the public, not a part of the academy. And you're going to demonstrate this in this video, and in my response, I am going to point out all the ways that you have fumbled the ball when it comes to just trying to understand the scholarship. And so when I say this is the consensus, I'm not saying, therefore it's right, you have to accept it's right. I'm saying, hey, I'm sharing what's going on in the academy with you. I'm not here to argue with you about it because you can't engage the argument competently. I'm here to point out what it is. Now, let's move on to how wildly you have misunderstood and misrepresented the scholarship.
So God creates the universe, and the earth is there. God began to create the earth is, but the location of the earth is located in, where does...
So as I pointed out in the previous video, this is actually a very simple concept to understand. You just have to want to understand it, and you don't, because you're not here to engage in good faith. You're not here to think critically. You're certainly not here to arrive at a better understanding of what my point is. You're just here to perform your histrionics and try to make it seem like what I'm saying doesn't make any sense, so that you can elicit all these little digital pats on the butt from your audience that are so important to you. But to explain it again, the process of creation that is described in Genesis 1 is a 7-day process. That process begins in day 1 with the creation of light. That's verse 3. The final product of the heavens and the earth, as this final completed product, doesn't exist until the very end. And so verse 1 is actually describing how God created the final product. And that process doesn't start until verse 3. Verse 2 explains the earth is already there in an inchoate state. It existed, but it's going to be used to create the final product. The heavens are described as created later on in this process. The earth is nowhere described as created. It exists in a state of mire and murk, submerged under the chaotic waters of creation. It is uncovered later on in the process so that it can become dry land, so that vegetation and animals can exist on it, but it is nowhere described as being created because it already existed before the first day of creation. And guess what? The one scholar you're going to appeal to try to argue against the consensus view of Genesis 1:1 agrees with me on that. You didn't bother to look to see what Westermann said about the relationship of verse 1 to verse 2 and to verse 3. Your confirmation bias had you just looking far enough to confirm your dogma. You didn't read the rest of it, and you didn't realize that Westermann actually confirms my point about the earth already existing before the creative act began. So let's move on.